Hey everybody, and welcome back to learning about the Terraform script that has been developed for giving Tableflow demos to customers. So what we're seeing on screen right now is the Tableflow Terraform demo, a README file, and this will walk you through all of the different components of the Terraform project, what it creates, the resources it creates and optionally creates, as well as how you can actually set this up to do demos for your own customers. So if we scroll down to the prerequisites, a few things you do need to set up before running these demos. One, you need to have a Confluent Cloud account, and we have instructions on how you can set that up. You can also log in to Confluent using the CLI. What I like to do is just get some API keys to make sure that you can plug those into the Terraform script, and I'll show you what that looks like. But it's a good idea to just run Confluent login so that you know that any command that the Terraform script runs is going to work. Next, you need an AWS account, and you will need an account with IAM permissions, as well as permissions to create S3 buckets. Those S3 buckets are going to be used for, of course, the Tableflow materialization. So we'll need to be able to create an S3 bucket, but the Terraform script does that for you. You do also need Terraform to be installed on your local machine, and the instructions on how to do that are here. You need the AWS CLI. This is going to help you to configure AWS on your local machine. And lastly, if you are working with the Databricks part of this demo, you will need to install the Databricks CLI to configure Databricks. So let's go through the initial setup, and I'll sort of walk you through how I set this up. I've done this ahead of time, but I'll show you where you can find a lot of this information. So the first thing, I'm going to open up my Visual Studio Code, and I need to configure AWS. So I'm going to type AWS configure, and it's going to ask you for your AWS access key ID, your AWS secret access key, as well as your region and the output format. So where can you go to find this? Well, if I'm in my AWS account, I can go to my user, or it really can be any user. But let's find my user. And you can create a security credential. Like I have some access keys here. And these are the ones that I used in my Terraform script. So when I believe I can only create two, let's see. Yeah, so it's not letting me create other ones. But if I created another one, then I would be able to have that information that I could plug in into my AWS configure command here. The access key ID, yeah, I'm using the one ending in LBGR. That's right there. And I have the secret access key plugged in. So my AWS is pre-configured. I can type things like AWS S3LS, and it'll show me all the buckets that I have. That means that it's working. So that's the first step. The next thing we want to do, if you are using the Databricks component of this demo, you'll want to configure Databricks. So once you install the Databricks CLI, you can type Databricks configure, and this will ask for a few different things. It'll ask for the Databricks host. If you have access to your Databricks environment, you'll open up your workspace. The URL here minus the O equals. This is your Databricks host combined with the HTTPS. So you can just get that from the URL. Let me plug that in. Oops. And your personal access token, you're going to go to your user, settings, you actually need to go to your developer settings, access tokens, and you can either, if you've already generated a token like I have, you can use that one, or you can generate a new token. We'll say this is for the Terraform demo, 90 days, and there's your token. I've already configured this, so I'm going to delete that one, but that's what you can do. And that is how you configure your Databricks CLI. So with the Confluent Cloud credentials, and this is the next thing that you'll need to take a note of, the first thing you're going to do is go to the top right, click on API keys, add API key, and you can do my account or a service account. Just move that for a second. We'll click on next, and you're going to select Cloud Resource Management. Once you've done this, you can type Terraform demo. And when you create this API key, this is exactly the details you need to put into your API key and API key secret for Confluent Cloud. And I'm not going to use this, but that's the one that I created for this demo. So once you've done all of that, you're ready to clone this repo and start putting in that information. And the first thing I like to do when I start configuring this repo is I look at this file called sample tfvars.txt. I'm going to actually copy this entire samples tfvars.txt into a new file called terraform.tfvars. And this is the default variables file that Terraform will look for all the variables that you've defined in your project. So we're going to paste this in here. This is, of course, and there's a merge conflict there. But these are all the variables, some of which you need to define, some of which you don't. So for example, this Confluent Cloud API key, that's the one we found in the previous step. The environment display name, you can give whatever name you want. And I'll show you what mine, once it's fully configured, looks like. The catalog types, these are for the purposes of the demo. If you are going to run a demo with Databricks, you want to include the word Databricks in this catalog types. It will configure a catalog integration for Databricks. Same with Snowflake and Glue as well. So if you want to run a demo with all three, that's what we're going to show in today's video. You can just leave it exactly like this. But if you want to be cost conscious or you don't have any need to show some of these, you can just delete them from the list. Okay, so a few other variables that we haven't looked at yet. The Snowflake endpoint. And this is actually going to be referring to the Polaris endpoint for Snowflake. Polaris is the catalog that Snowflake integrates with. The way you find that is from your Snowflake homepage. You're going to go to your Polaris account, or you can create one if you haven't already. And then the URL, that's going to be your Snowflake endpoint. The warehouse name is just going to be the name of your catalog. And then allowed scope is going to be something we'll walk through a little bit later. But this is effectively the principal role that you need to tell Confluent about so that it can assume that role and share its data with Snowflake. Now, these other variables for Polaris, we will get into in the Polaris section of this walkthrough. So I'm going to, for brevity, I'm going to skip this step for right now. Of course, you want to put in the AWS region that you're going to deploy all of your resources. And this will ensure that both your Confluent Cloud as well as your S3 bucket will be deployed in that region. And just real quick, let's go through Databricks. The Databricks workspace ID, you're going to find that in your workspaces. The workspace ID is this number just after workspaces in the URL. And the workspace name, this is just the name that is given to the workspace. You can define that. You can find that in the list of workspaces, but this is probably the easiest way to find it. The account ID, that's going to also be in the URL, other places as well, but just make sure that you're copying that full account ID. Databricks host, I think we walked through that before when configuring the Databricks CLI, but it's going to be from your workspace. That's going to be the host right here. And then the Databricks personal access token. Now to get this, we already showed it before, but you would effectively go into your settings, developer, access tokens, and generate a new token. That's going to give you your personal access token. And your Databricks SQL warehouse name, this is going to be something that either needs to be predefined or it will define one for you. But I like to have a serverless warehouse to run these demos with, so you can literally just specify this, like demo warehouse. And lastly, Databricks client ID. For this one, you will need the identity and access section of your developer settings. And you'll need to go into service principals, click manage, and you will want to create or reuse a service principal. So this is my service principal, JBurr Databricks Terraform, and you can create a secret. And if you created a secret, let me delete this one so you can see what that looks like. Generate a secret, we'll say 365 days. And then this is the client ID that you would want to specify. The secret you'll need to use elsewhere when you are setting up your Unity catalog integration. So make sure to copy both of these down in your notepad, but only the client ID is needed for the Terraform script. And I'm just going to delete that. And once you have all that configured, your script should look something like this. So I have my API key, API secret. I've given my environment display name as JB Tableflow environment. I have all three catalog types specified. I have my Snowflake and Polaris configuration. I'm using US East 1, and I have my Databricks configuration as well. I'm going to pause the video here, and we'll come back to spin up the Terraform script and see what that looks like. Okay, so now we're back in our project, and because you've installed and configured Terraform on your local machine, you should be able to type something like Terraform init. And this will look at all your providers, and it will make sure that they're installed so that Terraform can use them. And then you can type Terraform plan to just make sure that your project is going to work before it actually launches everything. It'll show you things like what the outputs are going to be and all the resources that will launch. And finally, when you're ready to deploy all the resources, you can type Terraform apply auto approve, and that will just make sure that that's all you need to type, and it'll just start launching things. While this is launching, I'll take a few moments to explain a little bit about what this actually does. So if we look at this architecture, what this Terraform script launches is two separate data gen connectors within your Confluent cloud environment. one that generates stock trades data, and the other one generates users data. But they're both going to be using the DataGen connector, generating this data into a Kafka cluster that is also created on your behalf within a Confluent environment that's created on your behalf. With one of those topics, called stock trades, Tableflow is going to be enabled. And it's going to be enabled, and it's going to be emitting data into a S3 bucket that is defined in our Terraform script. That S3 bucket can be found in the outputs of the Terraform script, and we can go in and we can actually see the data. For the users topic, we are not enabling Tableflow on this. And this is because as part of the demo, I like to show users what it looks like to enable Tableflow on a topic. So we have one pre-enabled, we can see the data, and the other one we can show what it looks like to enable it and do everything with that. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that we have 3 separate boxes. The first one is Glue catalog integration. So if you have Glue listed in those catalog types, then the Glue data catalog will be enabled to share metadata from our Iceberg catalog. With Snowflake, because not all of this is configurable within Terraform, there are some manual steps that we're going to walk through together to set up Snowflake, and I'll submit some chapters so you can skip around if you're not interested in that, but we'll walk through what it looks like to set up Snowflake. And then lastly, Databricks with Unity catalog integration. I'll show you the step-by-step to making that work. In the future, many of this will be fully automated using the Terraform script, but some parts are still manual, and we'll walk through all of those. So join me in the next step once the Terraform script is done launching, and we'll start to look at more specifics about what this script actually does. Okay, so after a few minutes, we can see that the Terraform script has actually successfully launched. And as promised, we can now see a bunch of the different necessary outputs that we would want to see when we're doing things like delivering demos. So we can see the names of our IAM roles that are going to be used through this demo. We can see the environment IDs, we can see the Kafka cluster IDs, and the S3 bucket names. Now, these are all going to use those pre-configured settings that we did in the prerequisites, or the requirements for running the Terraform script, and that's how the Terraform script knows where to launch all of these resources. So what does this look like within the Confluent environment? Well, if you see, we have a new environment now called JB Tableflow environment, and this is the one that I defined in my terraform.tf-vars file. And you will see that I have 3 clusters, one named Databricks, one named Snowflake, and one named Glue. In the future, we will be modifying this Terraform script to only have one environment with 3 catalog integrations. But to keep things clean, for right now, we have 3 separate clusters with 3 separate Tableflow instances. So the simplest one to demo is Glue. And within Glue, if we click into our topics, as I stated previously, we have the stock trades topic already configured with Tableflow. And if we go to the Tableflow tab, you'll see that I have a storage connection pre-configured with our IAM role. And we also have Glue configured. And when you want to show this, enabling Tableflow, all you would do is click on Enable Tableflow, click on Configure Custom Storage. We will select the Glue catalog integration, and then we'll get that S3 bucket from our outputs. And we'll click Continue and Launch. But we can actually already see the one for stock trades. If we go over to our Glue data catalog, data catalog tables, and we'll look at our cluster name. Cluster ID for Glue is this one. So we can see the stock trades right there. And shortly, we'll be able to see the users one as well, because I just defined it once that enables. But if we were to go into view data, we can then query this data through Athena, and customers really enjoy seeing this view because it's instant results. And I don't know if results are going to come back because I just launched this, but this would show you the data materialized in S3. Now, if you want to look at the S3 bucket for this catalog integration and this cluster, again, we'll go out to the outputs, click on the Glue one, and we'll find that bucket. And now we'll be able to see why I wasn't getting results. It's because I only have metadata here. Once your data folder shows up for one of these topics, then results will come back from Athena, but that's okay. So let's go to the next one. This is going to be our Databricks Unity catalog integration. This one is going to require some additional setup. But the first thing you can see, similar to the Glue catalog integration, we already have stock trades enabled. So that should already be materializing in Amazon S3. But we don't have our catalog integration set up yet. So what we'd want to do is in here, we'd click on Add Integration, click on Databricks Unity. We can call this whatever we want, and click on Continue. And these pieces, as I mentioned in the beginning, in the prerequisites, we will need these again. So let's go ahead and copy those, and I'll paste them in here. So for Unity catalog name, all that's required is your service principal needs to have permissions to write to that Unity catalog. So let's just take a look at my service principal for a second and see what it has permissions to. It has pretty much everything. So it should be able to write to any of these catalogs. I will just grab a random one here. And hopefully that will work. All right, and it just transitioned to connected. So let's go back to our Unity demo 6677. And then we'll see our cluster name. That's the same one that we have defined in Terraform. And then we can see all of our schemas and things like that. Now, one thing I like to do in this demo is click on sample data. And you do need to have a warehouse running to sample data. If you're using a serverless warehouse, it doesn't take too long to start up. But we'll just start this up and query the data so we can see in real time the data coming back. But again, unfortunately, for this recording, I'm doing it in real time. So it's taking a little bit of time for the data to materialize. But once it shows up, I promise it's going to be there in your Databricks demo. So it's a good idea when running these demos to spin them up, a few hours before delivering it to a customer. That's some advice that I should have taken myself, but there you have it. So the last and perhaps the most complicated setup is for Snowflake with Polaris. And I'm going to try to do my best to explain how this works. But the first thing you'll notice is when this launches, it is disconnected, and that's because there's no way to automate this. There are some better ways to do this not using Polaris, but I'm going to show you how I set it up with Polaris. Okay, so the first thing we notice within this catalog is it's actually reading from a different S3 bucket. The S3 bucket that I have defined is called 6677, and this one is 6311. So this isn't going to work. We're going to create a new catalog. And to do that, we'll just click on catalog here, and let's call this my Snowflake Terraform demo. And you do need to check that it's external, and the base location should be this one from your Snowflake S3. And you need to give that S3 IAM ARN. So that one, we will go and find it in S3. Sorry, we will find it in AWS. So let's copy it. We'll go back to AWS. Search for IAM, roles, and we'll find this role. There it is. And let's just copy the ARN right there. And I like to give a simple to remember external ID, so I'll just call this Snowflake external ID. And we'll hit create. So within here, I have some information. I have the S3 role ARN. That's the one that we provided. I also have the IAM user ARN. We're going to need that to create a trust policy. But first I need to create a role. And I like to just keep this simple as well and call it my role. And I'm going to define a privilege called catalog manage content. And lastly, we also need to make sure that we grant this role the principal role so that Confluent can assume this and make use of the permissions that we're granting. Okay, so finally, we need to come back to our IAM role and give additional permissions so that Snowflake can have these permissions to share metadata between Confluent and Snowflake. So I'm going to copy this first trust policy. This is the one from Confluent to S3 in AWS. But the format's going to be exactly the same for Snowflake. So you can just copy it with a comma to make sure it's in the list. Now for the principal AWS, I'm going to copy this value, the IAM user ARN, and put that right here. And for the external ID, remember I said keep it simple. We're going to copy that and put it right here. Okay, comma there. There we go. And now this policy should be ready to go. And we should be able to configure Tableflow with this. So the last thing we need to do is create a new connection because we don't have the credentials for this previous connection. So let's just call it my connection 2. And we'll keep the principal role the same. And we'll copy the client ID. We'll paste it right there. We'll copy the client secret, paste it right there. And we'll use the same principal role. And we need to make sure that the warehouse name or the catalog name matches. So let's just double check that. Paste that right there. Okay, we'll save changes and fingers crossed that this works. This is, like I said, the most complicated one. And if there are interest in using this with Glue, I do have a write-up of how you can do this with Glue. It's much simpler, but of course you don't have the Polaris integration. All right, and thankfully that shows as connected. Whew, that was a big relief that actually worked. And you would then be able to see the metadata here. And I know this video is already super long. I will link to a quick start that we walk through on how to actually query this data now that it's in Polaris. There's a few other steps and permissions you need to grant, but this is where I'm going to end the video. So thanks for sticking with me if you made it all the way to the end. I'm Jeremy Burr. You can reach out to me anytime if you have any questions about this Terraform script, and let me know how your demos with customers are going. Thanks.